In the sleepy town of Crestwood, the afternoon sun cast long shadows over Main Street. Officer Daniel Hayes leaned against his patrol car, parked near the town's only diner, sipping stale coffee. His partner, Officer Sarah Klein, scrolled through her phone, both expecting another uneventful shift. Crestwood was the kind of place where the biggest crime was a kid stealing candy. The radio crackled occasionally, but nothing urgent ever came through. Today, though, destiny had other plans. At Miller's Grocery, a small store buzzing with the usual afternoon shoppers, an elderly man shuffled through the aisles. His name was Hank Vaughn, a wiry figure in a faded green jacket, moving with a slight limp. His gray hair and weathered face made him blend into the background, just another retiree picking up essentials. Hank grabbed a loaf of bread, some canned soup, and a bottle of milk, his hands trembling slightly as he read the labels. Most locals knew him as the quiet old man from the outskirts, living alone in a modest cabin. No one paid him much attention. At the checkout, a young man in a hurry dropped his wallet while paying. Hank, noticing, bent down to retrieve it, but the cashier's eyes narrowed. "Hey, what are you doing with that?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the store. Shoppers turned. The manager rushed over, pointing accusingly. "He's trying to steal it." Hank's face fell, confusion clouding his eyes. "No, I was just," he began, but the manager was already dialing 911. Within minutes, Officers Hayes and Klein pulled up, ready to handle what seemed like a simple case. Little did they know, they were about to make a colossal mistake. Officer Daniel Hayes stepped into Miller's Grocery, his boots echoing on the tiled floor. Sarah Klein followed, her hand resting casually on her belt. The store manager, red-faced and indignant, pointed at Hank Vaughn, who stood by the counter, clutching the dropped wallet. "That's him. Caught him red-handed stealing," the manager barked. The cashier nodded vigorously, her arms crossed. Shoppers whispered, their eyes darting between Hank and the officers. Hank's voice was soft but steady. "I didn't steal anything. He dropped it, and I picked it up to return it." His weathered hands held the wallet out, but the manager scoffed. Daniel exchanged a glance with Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. "Sir, let's sort this out," Daniel said, his tone clipped. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Hank's shoulders sagged, but he complied without protest. The cold click of handcuffs filled the air as Sarah secured them. "This is a mistake," Hank murmured, his voice barely audible. Sarah ignored him, guiding him toward the exit. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, their murmurs growing louder. Some shook their heads. Others turned away, uninterested. In the patrol car, Hank sat silently in the backseat, staring out the window. Daniel drove, stealing glances at the old man in the rearview mirror. "He's too calm," he muttered to Sarah. "Probably done this before," she replied, jotting notes. At the station, they led Hank to a holding cell. Sarah tossed his jacket onto a nearby bench, smirking. "Stealing at your age? Bold move, old man." Hank didn't respond, his expression unreadable. As Daniel booked him, he couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Something about Hank's quiet dignity didn't fit the profile of a petty thief. Soon, that feeling would be proven right in ways he never imagined. At the Crestwood police station, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Officer Daniel Hayes processed Hank Vaughn's belongings. The holding cell was quiet, Hank sitting calmly with his hands folded, his eyes fixed on some distant point. Sarah Klein leaned against the desk, scrolling through her phone, dismissing the case as routine. "Just another day," she muttered, but Daniel wasn't so sure. He rifled through Hank's faded green jacket, expecting nothing more than a few coins or a grocery receipt. Then, his fingers brushed against something hard in an inner pocket. He pulled out a small, gleaming metal badge, its eagle emblem catching the light. Below it, the words, "United States Special Forces, Clearance Delta" were etched in precise letters. Daniel's stomach tightened. "Sarah, come look at this," he called, his voice low. She glanced over, her smirk fading. "Is that real?" she asked, stepping closer. Daniel opened Hank's worn leather wallet next. No credit cards, just a faded military ID, its design unlike any he'd seen. It listed a name, Henry J. Vaughn, and a contact number with a cryptic prefix. "This doesn't look like a standard ID," he said, unease creeping in. Sarah shrugged, but her confidence wavered. "Could be fake. Some old guys collect that stuff." Daniel hesitated, then dialed the number on the ID. It rang once. "Agent Marcus Cole, Department of Defense," a sharp voice answered. Daniel froze. "This is Officer Hayes, Crestwood PD. We've got a Henry Vaughn in custody for suspected theft." Silence. Then, Cole's tone shifted, urgent. "Secure the station. Do not question him. Do not let anyone near him. We're sending a team. 30 minutes. The line went dead. Daniel stared at the phone, his heart racing. "Sarah," he whispered, "who the hell is this guy?" The Crestwood police station felt smaller, the air heavier, after the call. Officer Daniel Hayes stood frozen, the phone still in his hand, Agent Cole's words echoing in his mind. Sarah Klein paced, her earlier confidence replaced by nervous energy. "Department of Defense? For an old man?" she muttered, glancing at Hank Vaughn through the holding cell's glass. Hank sat calmly, his weathered face serene, as if he were waiting for a bus, not a federal team. Daniel's eyes darted to the Special Forces badge on the desk, its eagle emblem glinting under the lights. "We need to lock this place down," he said, his voice tight. Sarah nodded, radioing the front desk to secure all entrances. The station's 2 other officers, puzzled but compliant, barred the doors. Outside, Main Street carried on, oblivious to the storm brewing within. Daniel approached the cell, studying Hank. "Sir, is there something we should know?" he asked, softer now. Hank met his gaze, his eyes sharp despite his age. "Just do your job, son," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "It'll all be clear soon." His calm unnerved Daniel more than any protest would have. Sarah joined him, whispering, "What if he's some kind of spy? Or worse?" Daniel shook his head, unsure. The clock ticked agonizingly slow. Every creak of the building made them jump. Daniel's mind raced. Had they arrested a criminal mastermind or a national hero? The badge, the ID, the cryptic call, it didn't add up. Exactly 28 minutes after the call, the rumble of engines broke the silence. Through the station's blinds, Daniel glimpsed 4 black SUVs pulling up, their tires crunching gravel. Sarah's face paled. "They're here," she said, her voice barely audible. The station was about to change forever. The station's door swung open with authority, and a wave of black-suited agents flooded in, their movements sharp and synchronized. Leading them was Agent Laura Bennett, a tall woman with a commanding presence, her sunglasses reflecting the station's dim lights. "Where's Henry Vaughn?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the tense air. Officer Daniel Hayes pointed wordlessly toward the holding cell, where Hank sat, unfazed, his hands still folded calmly. The agents approached the cell with a reverence that made Sarah Klein's breath catch. Bennett unlocked the door herself, her expression softening. "Mr. Vaughn, our deepest apologies," she said, extending a hand. Hank rose slowly, his limp more pronounced, and shook her hand with a nod. "No harm done," he said, his voice steady but warm. He glanced at Daniel and Sarah, offering a faint, knowing smile. As the agents escorted Hank out, one lingered behind a man with a weathered face and a badge identifying him as Agent Cole. He faced the officers, his eyes piercing. "You have no idea who you detained, do you?" he asked quietly. Daniel shook his head, his throat dry. Sarah stood frozen, clutching Hank's jacket. "Henry Vaughn is a legend," Cole began. "Served in covert ops across 3 decades. Missions so classified, even I don't know the half of it. He saved countless lives, thwarted attacks, neutralized threats, protected this country in ways you'll never read about." His tone grew stern. "You're lucky he's a patient man." The SUVs roared to life outside, and Hank was gone. Daniel stared at the empty cell, the weight of their mistake sinking in. Sarah's hands trembled as she set the jacket down. "We screwed up," she whispered. Cole nodded and left without another word, leaving the station in stunned silence. The Crestwood police station felt hollow after the SUVs sped away. Officer Daniel Hayes slumped into a chair, the Special Forces badge still on the desk, its eagle emblem mocking his earlier assumptions. Sarah Klein stood by the holding cell staring at the empty bench where Hank Vaughn had sat. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the station's air conditioning. Both officers felt the sting of their mistake, their confidence shattered. "We didn't even ask him for his side," Daniel said, his voice heavy with guilt. Sarah nodded, her face pale. "We just assumed he was guilty. An old man in a beat-up jacket, how could we be so stupid?" She kicked the desk lightly, frustration boiling over. The memory of cuffing Hank, his calm demeanor despite their accusations, gnawed at them. Daniel replayed the grocery store scene in his mind. The cashier's sharp accusation, the manager's quick judgment, their own haste to act. They hadn't checked the store's security footage or questioned witnesses. They'd seen an elderly man and assumed the worst. Now, knowing Hank was a decorated veteran, a hero with classified missions, the weight of their error felt crushing. Sarah picked up Hank's jacket, folding it carefully. "He didn't even argue," she murmured. "Just let us do it." Daniel nodded, his eyes fixed on the badge. He knew it'd sort itself out. That's not guilt, that's strength. The realization hit hard. They'd manhandled a man who'd risked everything for his country. The station's phone rang, jolting them. It was the chief, demanding a report. Daniel hesitated, unsure how to explain. "What do we even say?" Sarah asked, her voice shaky. Daniel sighed, standing. "The truth. We messed up. And we owe that man an apology." The day wasn't over, but their lesson had just begun. Back at the Crestwood police station, Officer Daniel Hayes and Sarah Klein sat across from Chief Ramsey, their report half-written on the desk. The chief's stern gaze bore into them, the Special Forces badge lying between them like evidence of their failure. "You arrested a national hero over a dropped wallet?" Ramsey's voice was low, but his disappointment was palpable. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his face flushed. Sarah stared at her hands, unable to meet his eyes. "We acted on the manager's complaint," Daniel started, his voice weak. "We didn't know who he was." Ramsey leaned back, shaking his head. "That's the problem, Hayes. You didn't bother to find out." He slid the badge toward them. "This man's file is so classified, the FBI barely let me confirm his name." "And you put him in cuffs?" Sarah's voice cracked. "We thought he was just some old guy." Ramsey's eyes softened slightly, but his tone stayed firm. "Assumptions like that can ruin lives. You're lucky Vaughn's not pressing charges." Daniel nodded, the weight of their actions settling deeper. They'd let bias cloud their judgment, rushing to conclusions without evidence. Ramsey stood, pacing. "You're both good officers, but this is a wake-up call. You don't judge a book by its cover, not in this job." He handed them a memo from the FBI, detailing protocol for handling high-clearance individuals. "Read it, learn it. This doesn't happen again." As Ramsey left, Daniel picked up the badge, its weight heavy in his hand. "We owe him more than an apology," he said quietly. Sarah nodded, her eyes distant. "Yeah, but how do you apologize to someone like that?" The station felt quieter now, their mistake a lingering shadow. They knew they had to make this right, somehow. The next morning, Officer Daniel Hayes sat in the Crestwood police station, the events of the previous day replaying in his mind. The Special Forces badge was locked away in evidence, but its image lingered, a reminder of their blunder. Sarah Klein sipped coffee nearby, her usual banter replaced by quiet reflection. Both officers felt the weight of their misjudgment, their confidence as cops shaken to the core. Daniel stared at the empty holding cell where Hank Vaughn had sat, his calm demeanor now a symbol of resilience. "We need to do better," Daniel said, breaking the silence. Sarah nodded, setting her mug down. "I keep thinking about how he didn't fight back. Not once. He knew who he was, and we saw nothing." They decided to review the grocery store's security footage, something they should have done before arresting Hank. The grainy video showed the young man dropping his wallet, Hank bending to pick it up, and the cashier's quick accusation. It was clear. Hank had no intent to steal. Daniel's stomach churned. "We could have stopped this right there," he muttered. Sarah suggested visiting Hank's cabin to apologize, but Daniel hesitated. "What if he doesn't want to see us?" he asked. Sarah's eyes were resolute. "We owe it to him to try." They agreed to go after their shift, hoping to make amends. As they prepared, Daniel's phone buzzed. A message from the station's front desk. A package had arrived, addressed to both officers. Inside was a plain envelope with no return address. Daniel's heart raced as he opened it, revealing a handwritten note and a small, metallic object. The note was simple, signed, H. Vaughn. Sarah gasped, holding up a military challenge coin. "He sent us this?" she whispered, awestruck. Officer Daniel Hayes held the military challenge coin, its embossed eagle gleaming under the station's lights. The handwritten note from Hank Vaughn lay open on the desk, its words simple yet profound. "Mistakes happen. Learn from them. Stay vigilant, stay kind." H. Vaughn. Sarah Klein read it aloud, her voice catching. The coin, a rare token of respect from a veteran like Hank, felt heavier than its metal. It was a gesture neither officer expected. Daniel's guilt deepened. "He's forgiving us," he said, almost disbelieving. "After we humiliated him." Sarah nodded, tracing the coin's edge. "This means something, Dan. He's not just letting us off, he's teaching us." The note and coin were a call to do better, to see beyond appearances, to honor the unseen sacrifices of others. They drove to Hank's cabin that evening, the gravel road winding through Crestwood's outskirts. The modest wooden structure stood alone, surrounded by pine trees, its porch cluttered with old tools and a single rocking chair. Daniel clutched the coin, his apology rehearsed but unsteady. Sarah knocked, her heart pounding. No answer. They waited, knocking again, but the cabin was silent. "He might be out," Sarah said, disappointed. Daniel noticed a small flagpole by the door, its American flag worn but proud. "Or maybe he's giving us space," he replied, placing the coin and a handwritten apology under a stone on the porch. Their note read, "Mr. Vaughn, we're deeply sorry. We'll do better. Thank you for your service." As they drove back, the sunset painted the sky gold. Daniel felt a shift inside him, a resolve to question assumptions, to listen before acting. Sarah glanced at him, her expression mirroring his. "We'll make this right," she said. They didn't know how yet, but they would try. The days following their visit to Hank Vaughn's cabin were quiet at the Crestwood police station, but the impact of that day lingered. Officer Daniel Hayes kept the military challenge coin in his pocket, a constant reminder of their mistake and Hank's grace. Sarah Klein pinned their apology note to the station's bulletin board, a silent vow to never repeat their error. Both officers moved through their shifts with newfound caution, questioning assumptions they'd once taken for granted. Chief Ramsey noticed the change. "You two learned something," he said one morning, approvingly. Daniel nodded. "We judged too fast. Never again." Sarah added, "Hank's story, it's bigger than us. We owe it to him to be better." They began training sessions with the team, emphasizing de-escalation and thorough investigation, using Hank's case as a lesson. One afternoon, a local news story caught their attention. A retired veteran had anonymously donated funds to repair Crestwood's community center. The article didn't name Hank, but Daniel and Sarah exchanged a knowing look. "That's him," Sarah whispered. They couldn't prove it, but it felt like Hank's quiet way of giving back, unseen yet impactful. Inspired, Daniel and Sarah organized a Veterans Appreciation event at the community center, inviting local heroes to share their stories. They hoped Hank might attend, but he didn't. Instead, a familiar envelope arrived at the station days later, containing a single line, "Proud of you both. Keep listening." It was signed, H. Vaughn. As Daniel held the note, he realized Hank's legacy wasn't just his covert missions but his ability to teach humility and respect. Sarah smiled softly. "He's still out there, changing lives." From that day, they saw every stranger differently, knowing heroes often walk quietly among us, their stories waiting to be heard.